What happens when a country spends decades telling families to stop at one child, then suddenly needs millions of babies to secure its future? In 2025, China recorded just 7.92 million births, the lowest number since modern records began, while its total population fell again to 1.404 billion. Behind that figure sits a question with global stakes. Can policy reverse behavior shaped across generations? Or has the demographic clock already moved too far to turn back? If China fails to change course, the consequences extend far beyond family life. A shrinking population means fewer workers, slower growth, heavier pension burdens, and rising fiscal stress. If it succeeds, it reshapes labor markets, consumption patterns, and power balances across Asia and beyond. This is not a cultural curiosity, but a structural challenge, because China's demographic trajectory influences supply chains, capital flows, energy demand, and strategic planning from South Asia to the Middle East, ultimately shaping the global economic order. To understand how China reached this point, you have to look back to the late 20th century. Beginning around 1980, the one-child policy was introduced to slow population growth that leaders feared would overwhelm food supplies, jobs, and development goals. Enforcement was strict in many regions, and over time, the policy dramatically reduced fertility. It also coincided with China's rapid industrialization, helping raise incomes by lowering dependency ratios. But it produced lasting side effects. 2 generations grew up as only children, small families became the social norm, and personal aspirations shifted toward education, careers, and urban lifestyles rather than larger households. By the early 2010s, demographic warning signs were already clear. The working-age population peaked around 2012, and the share of older citizens began rising quickly. In 2015, authorities allowed couples to have 2 children, acknowledging that the old system was no longer sustainable. When births continued to fall, the limit was raised again to 3 children in 2021. These policy reversals were historically significant, but they did not reverse behavior at scale. The data from 2025 shows how deep the shift has become. China's birth rate fell to 5.63 births per thousand people, the lowest recorded since 1949. The total population declined by about 3 million in a single year, marking the 4th consecutive annual decrease. China, once the world's most populous country, was overtaken by India in 2023, symbolizing a broader demographic turning point in Asia. At the same time, aging is accelerating. China now has roughly 323 million people aged 60 and above, accounting for about 23% of its population. That number continues to rise each year. The working age population is shrinking, meaning fewer contributors are supporting a growing pool of retirees. This imbalance directly affects pension systems, healthcare spending, and government finances, especially as economic growth slows from the breakneck pace of earlier decades. The government response has been broad and increasingly urgent. Authorities introduced direct financial incentives, including subsidies of around 3,600 yuan per child. Taxes on kindergartens, daycare centers, and matchmaking services were removed to reduce the costs associated with starting a family. At the same time, contraceptives were removed from a value-added tax exemption list, subjecting items like condoms to a 13% tax beginning in 2025. The signal is clear. Childbirth has shifted from a private choice to a national economic priority. Yet policy tools collide with everyday realities. Housing prices in major cities remain high relative to incomes. Job security has weakened as growth moderates and private sector hiring slows. Education costs are substantial, and expectations around tutoring and academic competition remain intense. Many young adults delay marriage or opt out of having children entirely, calculating that the financial and career risks outweigh the benefits. Cultural factors also matter. The brief uptick in births during 2024 did not last, and 2025 coincided with the Year of the Snake, traditionally viewed as an unfavorable zodiac year for childbirth, further suppressing numbers. At the macroeconomic level, China is attempting a difficult transition. The country is shifting away from labor-intensive manufacturing toward high-tech production, services, and domestic consumption. Automation and robotics can mitigate labor shortages in factories, but they are less effective in care work, education, and many service industries. Official data showed economic growth of about 5% in 2025, but many analysts expect slower growth in coming years as demographics weigh on productivity and demand. With fewer workers and more retirees, fiscal pressures intensify. Pension systems face long-term strain, healthcare costs rise, and local governments struggle to fund social services. To cope, China will likely need deeper pension reform, later retirement ages, and a broader tax base. None of these changes are politically simple, especially as public expectations rise and economic uncertainty grows. Consider one possible future. If fertility remains around one child per woman, China's population continues shrinking for decades. Labor shortages intensify in certain sectors, wages rise unevenly, and growth slows structurally. China leans harder on automation, artificial intelligence, and capital-intensive industries, but domestic consumption weakens as the population ages. In this scenario, manufacturing investment increasingly shifts to South Asia and Southeast Asia, where younger workforces are available. Countries like India, Vietnam, and Bangladesh benefit from relocation of labor-intensive industries. Now consider a different outcome. If workplace protections improve, childcare support expands, housing becomes more affordable, and economic confidence returns, fertility could stabilize at a higher level, even if it never returns to replacement rate. That would slow population decline rather than reverse it entirely. A more stable demographic outlook would support consumption, ease fiscal pressure, and sustain China's role as a central driver of global demand. South Asia benefits through trade rather than substitution, while Middle Eastern economies see steadier demand for energy and infrastructure investment. Globally, China remains a major anchor of economic stability rather than a drag. The most likely path lies somewhere in between. Births may recover modestly, but not enough to prevent long-term aging. That uncertainty itself shapes geopolitics. An aging China may prioritize internal stability, welfare spending, and cautious diplomacy. Alternatively, it may seek external economic opportunities and strategic influence to offset domestic constraints. Demographics influence military recruitment, innovation capacity, and diplomatic leverage, even if those links are indirect.